The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the park, but Emily Parker barely noticed. She sat trembling on a weathered bench, her delicate hands cradling her still flat stomach as deep, racking sobs shook her body. Just hours earlier, her world had collapsed. "John, please. I'm carrying your baby," she had pleaded, tears streaming down her porcelain cheeks. John's only response had been a cruel sneer. "Not my problem, babe. I'm not ready to be a dad." Then, without another word, he had turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, alone, abandoned and utterly shattered. At only 19, Emily's life had unraveled in a matter of moments. She had been forced to drop out of college, kicked out of her dorm because of her pregnancy, and with no family to turn to, she suddenly had nowhere to go. The apartment she had shared with John was in his name alone. Now, she had no home, no money, and soon, she would be a struggling single mother with nothing but heartbreak to her name. She sobbed harder, unable to stop the despair that threatened to consume her, until a familiar voice broke through the storm of her anguish. "Emily! Oh my God, what happened?" Samantha, her former roommate and resident advisor, rushed over, her face tight with worry. Without hesitation, she wrapped a comforting arm around Emily's shaking shoulders. Through broken sobs, Emily poured out the entire wretched story: John's betrayal, her homelessness, her fear for the future. Samantha listened with a mix of horror and fury, her grip on Emily tightening. "That bastard," she seethed. "How could he do this to you? You can't be out here alone, especially in your condition. Come with me. We'll figure this out, okay?" Emily could only nod, allowing herself to be guided back to the dorms. The sight of her meager belongings stuffed into a tattered duffel bag made Samantha's heart ache even more. Over mugs of hot tea, Samantha took Emily's trembling hands and whispered, "I think I have an idea that could be perfect for you." 1 week later, Emily stood at the grand entrance of a sprawling Beverly Hills estate, her palms slick with nervous sweat. She smoothed the wrinkles from her thrift store sundress, glancing down at her slightly rounded belly. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the doorbell. The massive oak door swung open, revealing a distinguished older gentleman in a sleek designer suit. He had an air of quiet power, yet his warm hazel eyes crinkled kindly as he smiled. "You must be Emily. I'm Michael Redford. Please, come in." Something about his gentle demeanor made Emily feel instantly at ease. She stepped hesitantly into the grand marble foyer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Redford. My friend Samantha explained my situation." "Of course," he murmured, leading her into an elegant study. "Please, have a seat. Tell me more about yourself." And so, Emily poured her heart out once more, sharing her fears and struggles while Michael listened with unwavering attentiveness. Not once did she see judgment in his expression, only quiet understanding. When she finished, fresh tears welled in her eyes. I just need a safe place to have this baby," she whispered. "A chance to get back on my feet." Michael took her hands in his own, soft, warm, and wrinkled with age, and gave them a reassuring squeeze. "Say no more," he said gently. "You're hired as my live-in companion. We have plenty of room here, and I could use some help with meals and therapy since my accident." Emily gasped, hardly daring to believe her luck. "Oh, Mr. Redford. Thank you. You've saved me and my baby." Over the next 8 months, the mansion transformed from a place of unfamiliar luxury into a true home. Under Michael's kindness, Emily blossomed. She filled the house with the rich aroma of home-cooked meals, helped him through his daily therapy exercises, and brightened his days with her laughter and warmth. In return, Michael doted on her, ensuring she had everything she needed for a healthy pregnancy. He converted one of the many bedrooms into a beautiful nursery, had his private doctor and a midwife make house calls, and treated Emily as if she were his own daughter. Then, at last, the long-awaited day arrived. After hours of labor, Emily gazed down at the tiny miracle in her arms, a beautiful baby boy with thick black hair and warm hazel eyes, so much like Michael's. She spent just 1 night in the hospital before returning home, her son swaddled against her chest. Michael met her at the door, his face glowing with pride. "What will you name him?" he asked softly. Emily smiled down at her baby, love swelling in her heart. "Lucas," she whispered. "Lucas Michael Parker." Michael brushed a gentle hand over the infant's cheek. "A wonderful name. Welcome home, little Lucas." From that moment on, life fell into a perfect rhythm. Emily spent her days caring for both Michael and her son. She read bedtime stories, played endless games of peekaboo, and sang lullabies as Lucas drifted to sleep in her arms. Love filled every corner of the mansion, turning it into something far greater than just a house. It became a sanctuary. But peace was shattered one summer afternoon by the sharp ringing of the doorbell. Emily settled Lucas into his crib before hurrying to answer it. The moment she swung the door open, she froze. "John." His once familiar face twisted into an ugly sneer as his gaze flickered between her and the nursery behind her. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice dripping with malice. "If it isn't the little girl who tried to trap me." Rage and humiliation burned through Emily. "How dare you?" she spat. "Get out of here." "No." Before John could respond, a cold, authoritative voice cut through the tension. "I believe you're mistaken." Michael had wheeled himself over, his sharp eyes dark with fury. "Emily is not some woman to be insulted. She is the mother of my grandson, and I suggest you treat her with respect." John's face paled. "Grandson? You can't be serious, Uncle Michael. She's just a lying." "That's enough," Michael interrupted icily. "Emily is a loving mother and a wonderful caregiver. I will not tolerate your insults under my roof. Leave now, or I will have security escort you out." John faltered, glancing between the two men. For once, he had no clever retort. With a final glare, he turned on his heel and disappeared down the driveway. Michael exhaled, turning to Emily with warmth and reassurance. "You're safe," he murmured. "You and Lucas will always be safe here." Tears filled Emily's eyes, not of sadness, but of profound gratitude. For the first time in what felt like forever, she truly believed it. As John cast one last hateful glare at Emily, he turned and slunk away, disappearing into the fading light of the evening. But they both knew this was far from over. The weight of his venomous words lingered in the air like a foul stench, poisoning the quiet that followed his departure. Inside the grand mansion, an uneasy silence settled between Emily and Michael. She stood frozen in place, her heart still hammering, her cheeks burning with shame and anger. She couldn't bring herself to meet Michael's gaze, afraid of what she might see, pity, disappointment, or worse, regret. But then, Michael cleared his throat, his voice low and measured. "I owe you an apology, Emily, and an explanation." Surprised, she looked up, her wide eyes searching his face as he wheeled closer, taking her trembling hands in his own. The warmth of his touch was steadying, reassuring. "The truth is," he began, his hazel eyes soft with emotion, "I have grown quite fond of you and little Lucas over these past months. You've brought such light, such life, into this house. Into my life." His voice was thick with something she had never heard from him before, vulnerability. "And I realized that I don't want you to just be my employee forever. I want you to be my wife. My real, true wife." Emily's breath caught in her throat, her mind reeling. "Lucas deserves a father's love," he continued gently, "and you deserve to be properly cared for. Not as a guest, not as an employee, but as family." She stared at him, her heart pounding in disbelief. "Marry you," she stammered. "But Michael, you're so much older than me. You're wealthy, and she hesitated, unsure how to put into words all the reasons this should be impossible. He gave a soft, knowing smile. "I may be older, but Emily, I have grown to love you deeply. This isn't charity. It isn't obligation. I want this. I want you. This way, I can right the wrongs of that cad who abandoned you. I can secure your future, and Lucas's, as my wife." She searched his eyes, looking for hesitation, for doubt, but she found none. Only warmth, only sincerity, only love. Her lips parted as the realization sank in. If you truly want me," she whispered, voice barely above a breath, "then I will marry you, Michael." Her voice grew stronger. "But I need it to be real. A marriage built on trust, on partnership, and maybe even love." Michael's face broke into a radiant smile. Lifting her hands to his lips, he pressed a kiss to them, his voice filled with reverence. "Nothing would make me happier, my dear." 5 years later, the Redford mansion was no longer the cold, silent estate it had once been. Instead, it pulsed with life and laughter, echoing with the joyous chaos of family. Two rambunctious little boys tore down the grand hallways, their giggles mixing with the delighted barks of their excitable puppy. "Lucas! Benjamin! You two better not be tormenting Rufus again," Emily called, her voice stern but filled with amusement. She stood in the sun-drenched kitchen, her face alight with happiness, a woman worlds away from the broken, frightened girl she had once been. Warm, strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned instinctively into the familiar embrace, sighing contentedly as Michael nuzzled against her neck. "Let the boys play, my love," he murmured, his voice rich with affection. "You've got your hands full enough as it is." She turned slightly, her eyes twinkling. "Oh, do I?" Michael chuckled, placing a gentle hand over the curve of her rounded belly. "Well, we'll have one more little hellion to add to the bunch soon enough." Emily laughed, covering his hands with her own. "Well, with your devilish good looks, can you blame me for wanting another?" She turned fully in his arms, gazing up at him with nothing but love and adoration. The once distant, reserved man she had met all those years ago was gone, replaced by a man who radiated warmth and devotion. Through years of relentless therapy, Michael had regained much of his mobility. Now, he was not just a father but an active, doting one, running with his boys, chasing them through the halls, lifting them high into the air as they shrieked with joy. He loved Lucas as fiercely as if he were his own flesh and blood, and his love for Benjamin, their biological child, was just as boundless. Together, their family was whole, complete, and filled with the kind of happiness neither of them had dared to dream of. Michael brushed a strand of hair from Emily's face, his touch tender. "I'll never be able to repay you for the light you've brought into my world," he whispered. "You've given me everything." Tears shimmered in Emily's eyes, but they were no longer born of sadness. Rising on her tiptoes, she pressed a soft kiss to his lips. "No, Michael," she murmured against his mouth. "You gave me everything. A real family. A life I never could have dreamed of. We saved each other." Just then, the sound of scampering feet broke the moment, and a tiny blonde whirlwind came barreling around the corner, followed closely by his giggling brother. "Mommy! Daddy!" Benjamin squealed. "Can we go swimming? Please, please. We'll be good." Lucas, ever the charmer, flashed a wide, mischievous grin. "Yeah. We promise we won't splash too much." Michael laughed, swooping down to scoop Benjamin into his arms while Emily grabbed Lucas, playfully ruffling his hair. "What do you say, my dear?" Michael asked, eyes twinkling. "Shall we teach these rascals how to properly cannonball?" Emily grinned, her heart soaring. "Last one in is a rotten egg," she cried, already racing toward the shimmering pool with two squealing children in tow. Chuckling, Michael followed at a slower pace, pausing for just a moment to take it all in, the sound of laughter, the warmth of the sun, the sight of his beautiful wife and children running ahead of him, so full of life. He had once lived in a world of cold loneliness and quiet despair, but those days were long gone. Now, he had everything. A wife who loved him. Children who adored him. A home bursting with love and laughter. Michael Redford had never considered himself a lucky man. But standing there, watching his family, his heart nearly bursting with joy, he realized the truth. He was one of the luckiest men in the world.